Hi everyone, my name is Fawad Shaikh. I'm part of Contrail Solutions group here at Juniper, and over the period of time I've been doing a lot of integrations. So this is one of the integrations that we'll talk about. So just kind of going back to what James said, right? So in today's world, right, you have a lot of applications, right? They're coming up, they're going down. These applications can run on your public cloud, Azure, or GCP, or AWS, right? Or it could be very well run on-prem, because some services, some customers want to run it on a bare metal server, right? Such as LDAP or your database. So in this environment, how do you, when applications are coming up and going back down, there are a couple of things that could happen, right? Your orchestrator, the application orchestrator could be Kubernetes, could be Mesos, right? Or could be any other container orchestrator, right? Or OpenShift. And the other thing is, from a network security admin perspective, if I'm a network security admin, how do I make sure what traffic is going where, right? Is the traffic compliant based on the policies that I have applied? Or is it non-compliant, right? How do I figure that out? How do I know? So that's something that's what we're going to cover, because these are the things that we have heard our customers kind of talk about, that, hey, between Friday and Sunday, there was an application that was trying to reach out to other application, which it was not supposed to. And I don't know, how do I figure out who's where, which environment, right? And that's one of the solutions that we have with Contrail Security, right? How do we address that issue, right? So in this, so what I've done here, I have a quick video. So I'm going to be like pausing and talking over it. And then if you guys have questions, I have the exact same setup live. So we can just go in and look at things that you guys are more interested in, kind of look at under the hood how we are doing it. But in the interest of time, I just made a quick video so we can just kind of move along. So as you can see here, what we have, so the first question is, what does my topology look like, right? So I have an OpenStack environment, a Kubernetes, and OpenStack plus bare metal, right? I have a 3-tier app, web, app, and DB. And normally, when you apply a policy, you want your web to talk to app and app to talk to DB, right? You don't want your web to talk directly to your DB, right? So essentially, this is what I have. Don't worry about the IP addresses. I've just put it there. And that's one of the things that Contrail Security solves, right? With the intent tag-based policy system, you don't have to care about, hey, this is the IP subnet, who's going where, right? All what you're saying is, hey, my web needs to talk to my app. As long as I've created my tags, I'm going to attach those tags to those objects or VMIs or virtual networks or projects or domain. Life is good, right? I don't, especially for app developers, and we'll see how I bring up my Kubernetes environment, they don't care about what IP. All they care about is, hey, here's my application. This needs to be done, and I just want to do it. And when I'm done, I'm just going to shut it off, and it should go away, right? And there are two policy models. One is for the network security, right, who will apply a global policy saying that, okay, everyone in this cluster, right, which has workloads in OpenStack as well as Kubernetes, can do SSH and Telnet, right? And then there should be a project-based policy, right, which basically says that that's more for the app developer who is going to write an application, say web to app or app to DB. So network security admin should not be describing what an app developer wants in his own environment, right? Whereas network security admin would like to define that, hey, I'm going to apply a global policy for everyone in this cluster, right? And no one can do Telnet or SSH, for example, right? So with that thought, let me kind of move forward. So today what we're going to show is we have an environment. We're going to bring up pods in Kubernetes. When those pods come up, we're going to apply the policies. And those policies will basically say, hey, my web to app and app to DB. And if you see here on the top, what I have is I've tagged my deployments accordingly, right? So you're, like James mentioned earlier, you can have the same application running in your dev environment, development, staging, and production, right? Now, from a policy enforcement for security admin, I don't really want to create like 3 different policies for 3 different environments, right? I would say that, hey, there's my global policy, and it should be applied to everyone. And at the same time, I think there was a session on Contrail security yesterday by Aniket, which you guys must have attended, which kind of talks about, hey, if I have my web app in DB in one environment, I don't want my web to talk to my app in a different environment, right? That's a good no-no, right? So in our policy that we write, we basically say, hey, match on deployment, which basically means, hey, I'm going to be in development, and I'm going to be in production, and I don't want any crosstalk. So essentially, this is what it shows. OK, so topology for today, right? So I have my Nova Compute 1, Nova Compute 2. I have a bare metal as well. So remember how I mentioned that certain services, certain customers are just not comfortable running it in the overlay. They want to keep those services on a bare metal, right? So I have a server, which is a bare metal server, and I have LDAP running, right? So any application that comes up would like to go to LDAP to authenticate and come back and move forward. So today we're going to basically go to the Kubernetes environment and bring up these pods. On the Kubernetes, as you would know, there's a kube master node, and then you have the minion. It's also called as kubelet. Kubelet process is running there, and that's what we are going to go over. OK, so first thing first, let's look at the Contrail Web UI to see what we currently have. So once I log in, what do I see here? I see 4 virtual routers, 1 control, analytic, config, and database. So this is a non-HA setup, right, just for a demo purpose. I'm going to click on vRouter. Here I see the Kubernetes minion, right? So that's actually where my kubelet is running, right? And I have my containerized vRouter, right? So let's see what currently it has in its interfaces. So here I see just one tap interface, some VM, which is running on that kubelet, right, as of right now. So that's fine. Let's go back. I have 8 instances and 12 interfaces, right? So this is how we are starting off with. So next, I'm going to go to my Kubernetes master, right? So what do we have here? So if I do an ls, first let's take a look at the web dev YAML. So in Kubernetes, you have these YAML files that developers have, right? So let's take a look what is in this YAML file. So here, remember I talked about tags, right? So here's a developer whose first application is web, right? Remember we talked about web app and DB. So we're looking at web here. Here, what I'm doing is I'm tagging my my workloads as they come up, right? Now in Kubernetes environment, there's no concept of tags, right? There are labels. So essentially what we're doing is we're leveraging these labels and converting them into tags on the Contrail side, right? So remember in the Kubernetes environment, we have kube manager, right? So essentially what that does, it's kind of like a bridge between your Kubernetes world and your Contrail world, right? So these labels, I'm going to take these labels, I'm going to convert it to API requests for my Contrail, and Contrail will create these objects and call them as tags, right? But from a developer perspective, right, I've been told by network admin that, hey, this is your space, and these are the tags or labels that you should use, and I'm going to write policies for those. So as long as your workloads come up, right, you are seamlessly going to use the policies that I've written, right? So that's what we have. A simple example, so the name is web dev, namespace is default, and I have these 4 labels. Application label is HRHCM. The second thing we want to look at is the policy, right, of course. So if I do a vim on that, look at the policy. Let's stop this here. So what does this policy tell me, right? It's telling me, hey, you have a policy from web to app, right? And the tier is app, and the tier is web, right? So in this topology, what I have is, remember the 4 tags we talked about yesterday that we support? So let's talk about, the first is the application tag. So here, the application tag in the earlier file that we looked at was HRHCM, right? Some application. The second tag was the tier. So tier is more for the developer to say that, hey, web, app, and DB, right? So I created that tier. The other thing is, what is my deployment? Is it production? Is it staging? Is it dev, right? So that's where I basically mention my those tags, and then the site. Hey, is this in France? Is this in US? What have you, right? Because certain things like database, you don't want your France to basically accessing database in US and vice versa, right? We all know that's something which is not even allowed in EMEA region, right? So here's an example of the policy. So far we looked at the YAML file for the pod, and then looked at one of the policy. Okay, next what we're going to do is see if there are any pods running. So there's no resources found. So now what I'm going to do is I have a small script in the interest of time, and let's see what this script does, right? So it's going to launch 3 pods, web, app, and DB, right? The first thing. And then it's going to create those policies, right? Attach those policies. So let's do that, right? So create and apply policies. So when I launch my pods, they're coming up. One thing here I want to pause and kind of show you guys, right? So as they are coming up, note the labels, right? These are the labels we just saw in the YAML file. So as an app developer, if someone tells me, hey, use these labels, and the policy that the network admin or myself, right, my workloads itself are seamlessly going to be part of that policy. Right now, this is Kubernetes example. You can do the same thing in Mesos or Neutron, what have you, right? So from an app developer, all I need to do is write policy for myself. And then let's say our security admin will write a policy globally, right? Adhering to these labels, right? So all I have to do, I don't have to worry about anything outside of my scope, which is a project-based scope, right? Or namespace, right? I don't care. All I want is, hey, I want to get my work done, and that's it. Whereas security admin is enforcing the global policies that none of these apps should be able to do, let's say some SSH or Telnet or what have you, right? So,
question?
Sure.
If a developer for some reason forgets to apply a label or mislabel something, is there a mechanism in the system to identify mistakes?
We are working on that, but what we do have today is, let's say he forgot to apply something, right? And his application is obviously not working, right? So what will happen is some traffic will be generated, right? And it will not adhere to the policy that it should, right? So that's a very good question, and I think that's one of the pain points, right? That, hey, I forgot something, and it happens every day. So we have this notion of visualization, which clearly tells me that, hey, there's a traffic, it's red right now, right? And you are going from web to app, whereas as a developer, I would have said, hey, I should be able to go from web to app, right? But when I look at the visualization, I say, oh, it's red. Then when you click on it, it will tell me exactly, and we'll take a look at it, which virtual network, which environment, which client IP, and which is the server remote IP. And then you'll say, okay, I forgot my tag. Let me go back and create a policy. That's my bad, right? And we'll take a look at it. That's a really good question, and that's part of the reason we have Contrail security with visualization.
So
right?
I have another sort of related question.
Sure.
Can you scroll that back just like
2
seconds?
Oh, okay. Here?
Right. So what if all of my management IP is v6? Does it still work then?
These IPs?
Yeah.
Today, it should work. We haven't tried it, but it should work.
It just rely on the underlying systems.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it should actually prefer it if it's available and.
It's available. Yeah. We haven't.
Cool.
I myself haven't tried it, but yeah, it should, because we don't really care about IP address, right? You just need to create an IPAM,
right,
which is a v6, and you're good to go, right? Yeah.
Exactly what I wanted to hear. Thank you.
Okay. So, all right. So what we did, we brought up our pods, but we haven't really applied the policy. So I'm going to apply these policies. The first one is the one that we looked at, web to app. And then there's a bunch of other policies, which basically says that, OK, I want to go from my web to my LDAP service. And LDAP service is running on a bare metal, right? So now, let's go and go back to our Contrail UI. Now, this is the part which would answer the question which came up earlier. So here, when I refresh, I see 11 instances and 15 interfaces, right? So what essentially has happened is those pods that we brought up, they all got an IP address, and now they are visible in your in the UI, right? The IP addresses, right? So this is the integration that we did, right? So now the other thing is traffic groups, and I'm going to click on all projects or cube, right? And what I'm going to do in the visualization is I'm going to say, hey, give me all the statistics since right now, right? And that's what I'm doing since, and I'm saying, hey, right now, give me all the statistics. And if I save, since we have only brought up the pods and there's no traffic, you will see no statistics found, right? Because we just brought up the pods and applied the policies. So next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the pods itself, right? So I'll go to the web dev first, right? I'll do a kubectl exected web dev bash. So this container, I have a setup script, and essentially what it does is it starts a SSH daemon. And the reason for that is I want to show everyone here that it's not only ICMP traffic, it could be SSH or what have you, right? So I'm enabling SSH daemon on both my app and dev, right? Then we'll go back to our web, and let's do an ls. Here's a demo script, right? Now for this, and look at all the IP addresses, right? As a user, I don't care. I'm just printing it out because I had it in my slide earlier. But as a user, you should not really care about what the IP addresses are, right? So I have a Kubernetes environment, OpenStack development, production, and some bare metal. Note the IP is 44.98, right? So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to generate some traffic, right? And the traffic is going to be, hey, the traffic which is based on the policy that I just created, right? So the first thing I want to do is go from web dev pod to app dev pod, for example, right? So based on my policy, this should go through, right? And one thing here is I have all these pings and SSH, but to be really honest, it's all application layer, right? There's a database running, it's a web. So just for this session, I just wanted to kind of reinforce folks here that I'm doing SSH and ping, but normally in my other demos, I just have a web browser, some application running, just refresh and so on, right? But you guys would get an idea. So the next is, so I have some SSH between this as well. The other is my web dev pod wants to go to LDAP, right, which is service which is running on a physical server in the OpenStack environment, right? Again, the point is I have my Kubernetes environment integrated with my Contrail and OpenStack, right? Same application is running in both environments. So generated some traffic. So now validate via visualization. So what did I just do, right? As a network admin, if I refresh, it would basically show me the exact traffic which was generated, right? Now this is pretty cool, guys. The reason is there could be so much traffic going on. How do I know what traffic is going where, right? So if I look at that here, so it's telling me between my web to my app, there were 2 sessions generated. What were those 2 sessions? They were ICMP and TCP port 22, right? And this information is not enough, right? So let's click on one of them. So here, it's telling me the local IP. And this is the port 249 that we just brought up, right? It's telling me that, hey, this resided in cluster network. And then it's also telling me the remote IP of this particular workload as well. And remember that policy, web to app, that's the one that we just created by ourselves in Kubernetes environment, right? One of the things is that we wanted to make sure for the app developers, right? We don't really want them to necessarily go to Contrail and worry about that, right? If they so choose not to. In their own Kubernetes environment, they can write their YAML network policies that they already understand and know, and don't have to worry about Contrail. They can go to Contrail for the visualization. Either they can or the security admin can go and look at the traffic pattern, right? Okay, So this is all the good stuff. Everything is working fine. Everything is working as per my policy. But what would happen if I try to access something that I'm not supposed to, right, which does not adhere to my policy? How do I find that out? So we're going to generate some traffic going from web dev pod to DB dev. So obviously, that's not allowed. Remember, web to app and app to DB. So we're going to generate some traffic. We're going to also say that dev to production. Now, remember, we have a match here, which says that, hey, match on deployment, which means you cannot go from your dev to your production, right? And essentially, that's what we are showing here. Traffic doesn't go through. And let's look at the visualization now, right? So I'm going to go back and going to hit refresh. And that's your traffic that just got denied, right?
I have just one question. How do you feed that data into that visualization? So what is the source that you have seen that this has been blocked?
So the question is where this data comes from.
Yeah.
So remember, the policy enforcement is happening on the vRouter, right? So vRouter is on the compute. We already have a lot of rich analytics, which we are leveraging, right, to get that information and basically put it on a nice UI to basically show you, right? So Contrail historically is known for a lot of analytics data, right? So we are just leveraging the same data which was there prior to Contrail security, right? Obviously with the tags and everything, right? All of that model. And we are just basically showing it in the UI.
Okay.
Yeah. So another thing a lot of people ask me, right? Especially one of the customers that I'm helping them with is, hey, is this like a dramatic change in Contrail that you're showing this? And the answer is no. And the reason for that is the development of this literally took like months, weeks actually, not months. And the reason is we are already leveraging the tag which is already there in the object for Contrail. We are just saying, hey, it was already there, we were just not using it, right? So it's not like a rewrite of the entire code or anything. We are just leveraging something which is already there and using it. Okay, so here's some traffic. As a network admin, I'm concerned what this traffic is, right? There's an implicit deny. Implicit deny basically is telling me that, hey, there's some traffic which is not supposed to be there, right? So someone needs to take a look at it. So when I click on that, it's telling me the local IP of the pod and also the local virtual network along with the remote virtual network. So the traffic which was going was from dev to prod, right? So that's your pointer that, hey, here's a dev, here's a prod. The first thing as a debugging, what I would do is go and see if my match condition is there. If my match is there, then this is correct, right? Because my dev should not be able to access my prod environment, right? And if it's not there, then, then I know what's going on too, right?
Just one question. This would be seamless. So in your example, you had also a physical device.
Yes.
For example, this is behind a firewall SRX or something, yeah? It is blocked there. For you, it would be seamless if it is a virtual instance that is blocking that, or in the case of a physical device, you would also feed that into here, yeah?
So that's a good question. So as of today, if the traffic is being blocked at VSRX, right, we don't have that integration. We are working on it, right? But for bare metal, if there's something happened at the bare metal, we would know. But for any service chain example or NFV, we are working on that. And the first step we are taking is with VSRX. We are working with the team. Actually, I'm working with the team there to basically have these tags be understood at the left and right interface of the VSRX, right? Okay. So right now, no. But I think in the next release, it should be there, right? Because you're right? What if the traffic is going between like multiple service chain? So right now we only have visibility between one side and the other side. But what if the traffic gets dropped in between? Yeah. So definitely that will be part of Contrail security very soon.
Okay. Cool.
Okay. So the other thing is, so this is good, right? But in an environment when you have thousands of applications going up and down, we have nice filters here. As you can see, you can customize it. You can say, hey, I want some traffic between, let's say Sunday to another date. So you can go back in time and look at the same data. And also you can, these are the standard filters that you would have. I'm saying, hey, I want to look at application, deployment, and site. So these are all the filters. The reason I'm showing this is you can have, this screen can be really busy. So you can basically filter based on all projects, the exact project that you're interested in, and so on and so forth, right? So these are like standard filters, because when you have thousands of applications communicating, one of the important things we want to make sure is how do I filter and go to my exact project, right? So that a security admin can pinpoint, hey, this application who owns, the X user owns this application, his application is either compromised or there's something going on, and we can fix it, right? Identify and then basically fix it. So in a nutshell, I just wanted to not take too much time, but kind of wrap up with the notion that with tag-based policies, you don't have to worry about IP addresses. You can seamlessly do integration with different orchestrators, right? And one of the most powerful tools here is the visualization, right? When you have so many applications in different environments coming up and down, if something is not adhering to the policy that either the security admin has used or the developer, he or she has used, we can figure out by visualization. Any questions?
Can you do it by layer 7 information or layer 4, ports and all that stuff? If you're not worried about the IP addressing, can you still kind of make those assumptions?
That's on the roadmap. So this is all done at the vRouter layer. So layer 3 to 4 can be done, but anything above, you have to put it through a VSRX, and that's the integration that we are working on.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, so kind of recapping how I introduced Fawad, and talking about network and visibility and stuff, and just to remember that this is networking field day, right? And this is sort of revealing what's behind the curtain. But the actual SRE dev experience actually is you never even have to see Contrail, right? And in fact, it's kind of interesting that in Kubernetes, they came up with this thing called the network policy object, right? A couple years ago, and it went GA more recently. But even with Contrail networking and security, right, you could put your security ops and your network ops team in charge of building the proper policies and then have them automatically applied so that the devs/SRE guys are just using labels and namespaces and stuff to slice and dice things and really don't know the magic that's going on behind the scenes. Yeah.
Great. So I think the missing part is still the layer 7 VSRX integration, but hopefully this will come soon. Yeah.
Yep. All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.